our story.
The White House is calling warrior dividend. 1.28 million active duty troops and 174,000 members of the reserves are in the process of receiving a one-time payment of $1,776. President Trump says that the money is in honor of the country's 250th anniversary next year. The funds are actually from $2.9 billion set aside by Congress to supplement the money given troops to pay their rent or mortgage, according to a Defense Department official who was not authorized to speak publicly. The Defense Department says the $1,776 will arrive over the next few days. For NPR News, I'm Steve Walsh.
A jury in Minnesota awarded $65.5 million today to a woman who claimed talcum products made by Johnson & Johnson exposed her to asbestos and contributed to her developing cancer. The company says it will appeal the verdict. It's the latest development in a long-standing legal battle over such claims. Stocks finished up on Friday. The Dow's Jones Industrials were up 183 points. The NASDAQ ended up the day 301 points. This is NPR News. A new study finds people who regularly consume high-fat cheeses may have a lower risk of dementia. But as NPR's Allison Aubrey reports, nutrition experts say there's a catch.
The study included nearly 28,000 people who were in their late 50s when the study began. They were surveyed about their eating habits, and after about 25 years of follow-up, it turned out higher intake of high-fat cheese was associated with a slightly lower risk of dementia. However, scientists who reviewed the data say this association does not prove that high-fat cheese protects the brain. Those who consumed about 1.5 ounces of cheese or more per day had about a 13% lower risk, which could be explained by chance. Also, researchers only captured a snapshot of participants' dietary habits. Given the risk of dementia is determined by many factors, from genes to lifestyle habits, scientists warn against reading too much into the findings. Allison Aubrey, NPR News.
The 95-year-old Black Hawk Bridge that crossed over the Mississippi River was imploded on Friday. The span now sits half submerged in the river. The bridge connected Lansing, Iowa to Wisconsin. It had been closed since October. It will now be replaced by a new structure. It's expected to open in 2027. Commuters will use a ferry until then to cross the river. Federal investigators are examining the wreckage of a business jet that crashed in North Carolina this week, killing NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his family, and 3 other people. The Cessna C-550 burst into flames as it was attempting to return to a North Carolina airport. It had left less than 10 minutes before. Investigators have recovered the cockpit voice recorder. I'm Dale Booker, NPR News.
Sad. Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for chefs and designed for restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
In Colorado. Just listen to the news.
This is Today Explained.
Elias Light is a music reporter for the Wall Street Journal. He's been writing about the rise of Christian music this year.
Billboard ran a piece back in May about how there were 2 Christian artists on the Hot 100 simultaneously, which hadn't happened in a really long time. And then also there's a kind of a separate data company called Luminate, and they publish twice a year reports on kind of listening behavior and tracking how different genres are doing.
We got a lot
and
of
in 2 consecutive reports, they sort of flagged that Christian music was growing really fast. So that kind of got me intrigued that maybe it was something to dive into.
How popular has Christian music gotten? What was the data that was really drawing you in?
Yeah, so I think there were 2 kind of key points. One is there were these 2 songs that were both on the Hot 100, one by Forrest Frank.
I don't know if we could listen to the copyright stuff.
And the other by this guy, Brandon Lake.
So, anyway.
The other was just the speed at which it was growing. It's still like a relatively small genre compared to pop or hip hop, but it's been expanding really quickly. And it's not that far away now from electronic dance music in the US, which is what, kind of what we think of as one of the big traditional genres.
That data point is interesting. You mentioned a couple of artists who were on the Hot 100 list, and I have actually heard a couple couple of those songs because it seemed as if it was breaking through into like larger pop culture. But I want to clarify like what we're talking about when we mean Christian music. Like, you know, I grew up in a church where I think that was more like gospel style. It feels like we're talking more evangelical Christian artists, more pop Christian artists.
Yeah, definitely. So like when Luminate talks about sort of tracking the growth of the space overall, they kind of lump all the Christian faith-based stuff together. So it's both the gospel and the contemporary Christian music, which is what they kind of call the other wing of that space. But my article focused more on the latter just because that's where right now you've seen kind of these big artists make kind of mainstream gains, like a Forrest Frank, like a Brandon Lake.
And is this a certain sound? Like, how overtly religious are we talking about these songs being? Is it like lyrics that are just generally inspiring, or is it clear from both lyric to artist that this is Christian music?
Yeah, so I mean, it varies a lot, but I think a lot of what you're seeing in this new wave is they don't really want their stuff to be hold as worship music that's only for church. You know, like Forrest Frank talked about this. He used to make secular music. He started making Christian music. He felt like there was no Christian music that worked well outside of a church environment. He wanted to make music for the gym that was Christian, music for beach parties, stuff like that.
Okay, so this Forrest Frank, what does he actually sound like? And describe to me the hits.
Yeah, so I think so much of what we've seen in the last 10 years of pop or whatever has been kind of borrowing the drums, especially from Atlanta hip hop. So it's kind of like this trap pop sound, you know, like very busy hi-hats with like some nice keyboards. He used to be in this electronic pop duo called Surfaces.
Yeah.
Back during COVID and like the early days of COVID when people started going viral like crazy on TikTok, Surfaces had one of the first really big viral pandemic hits. Feeling good, like I should. He would try to like smuggle Christian ideas into the lyrics while he was with Surfaces, but eventually he started writing his own explicitly Christian music. When I'm overwhelmed within from the weight of all I need done over 1 billion streams just this year alone. Wow. And that is kind of his thing, is like it is very pop friendly in sound. If you listen closely, you are going to be like, oh, this guy's, you know, he's talking about his love for God and stuff like that. But if you just kind of are scrolling through social media and you happen to find his music in a dance challenge, you may not even notice that it could be Glass Animals or some other kind of pop group.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I was taking away when I was listening to it. In some ways, you know, it was explicitly kind of Christian lyrics. It wasn't hiding the kind of message of it. But the sound of it felt kind of TikTok-y, I would say. Like, how much are we talking about a rise in Christian music generally versus how much is this driven by these emerging social platforms and specifically TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's so fascinating about kind of the modern music industry, and we've seen this with K-pop, we've seen this with Latin music, we've seen this with country, is the industry used to be super siloed, right? And there were kind of these walls drawn between genres. Rock fans listen to rock, rap fans listen to rap. There wasn't a lot of mingling, right? But now that we live in this age of streaming and social media, there's just so much more accessibility. Everyone listens to everything. And we've seen a number of genres really benefit from that and grow. And like, again, I mentioned country and K-pop and Latin. Those are kind of like the big three, but also I think some of those same factors are helping Christian music. It's just, it's accessible in a new way that it wasn't, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. You can kind of stumble across it and then be like, oh, I kind of like this song.
Yeah, you know, I am thinking so much about like the TikTok of it all too, because you know, maybe the verse of the song is explicitly Christian, but the chorus, you know, particularly as I was listening to this Forrest Frank song today, is just a general inspiring message about having a good day. And if I'm scrolling for 30 seconds, it's not like explicitly clear to me that that good day is because of the Messiah, as the rest of the song would tell me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, TikTok is like probably the most powerful music promotion platform in history because it can get you addicted to something with just like 7 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, your article mentions these artists bypassing traditional Christian
Check out the
music
band 7
gatekeepers.
Seconds.
I guess, you know, one of the things we were thinking about is how much of this do we think relates to kind of the future of even radio or major labels kind of controlling access to the genre's audience? Is some of this a story also about those changing gatekeepers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's not just even a Christian music thing. There's sort of a much wider question right now of what is the value of a major label. Radio hardly moves the needle anymore. These labels still have a lot of money, but basically artists can get so popular without them. You know, at least for now, you still see most big artists are affiliated with kind of these major labels in some way, but they're able to get much better deals than they ever could because they can go so far on their own. So yeah, any music gatekeepers right now in any genre are facing this kind of existential question, which is kind of what value can we still bring to the table?
Do you think this is a kind of flash in the pan? How do we know if these moments, you know, as we look ahead, is this a trend for 2025, or do we have any hints on if this is a trend that's going to grow or sustain moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, I can't predict if it's going to continue growing at the same rate. If I could, I would be a wealthier man. But I think, again, in terms of sort of like the larger shifts that have happened that allow this growth, right? In terms of accessibility via streaming and social media, those themes seem here to stay.